and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. I'm your host, Emma Thomas, founder of Managing the Menopause and the Triple Shift. I'm welcoming back today registered nutritionist, health writer and author of the Perimenopause Solution, Emma Bardwell. And this is Emma's second time guesting on the podcast. She came, I don't even know how long ago now, quite a while ago now, to talk about the Perimenopause Solution. And her latest book, The 30-Gram Plan, is out now. Welcome back to the podcast, Emma.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back again.
Back again. You've joined a sort of an exclusive club of just a few people, I think, who've been back for a second helping.
I'm honoured.
And I have to say, the Perimenopause Solution is still up there in my. I have an extensive menopause library, as you might imagine, interviewing lots of people in this space. And it's definitely one of the ones that I still recommend to people. I think it's just that kind of combination of yourself and Shazadi Harper for the kind of the medical side of things. I think it's a really nice combo. So I think it's definitely standing the test of time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, people are still buying it and still giving lovely feedback and, reviews. So yeah, I'm very grateful. Yeah, I'm proud of that book. I like it a lot.
So what made you decide to write the 30-gram plan? Where does that all stem from?
So essentially, I've kind of alluded to this in the intro, but it was just the sheer amount of overwhelm that people were facing when, opening social media, lots of conflicting messages, lots of confusion. My clients tend to be really kind of overwhelmed and time poor, and people were just saying to me, just tell me what to eat.
I mean, that's essentially the subtitle of the introduction, isn't it? You've literally written it, just tell me what to eat. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, that really resonates. It's so, we are bombarded. And I know I've sort of talked about this when I've talked to other kind of people who work in this space. But I think the noise, I know people are talking about food noise at the moment a lot because of the medications that are out there that supposedly remove that food noise in terms of feeling within your body. But I guess I'm talking more about the sort of the social media noise or that kind of overwhelm that you're alluding to, where it's very hard sometimes to kind of to find a way forward when there's so much information out there. So what I really like is the way that you have really simplified this down as far as you possibly can. So tell us a little bit more about what the kind of the key messaging is and why.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I think, people were telling me that they were kind of stuffed with information, but they were starved of practical ways to put it on their plate, So that's actually what I've done in the book. I've translated the science and the latest research into simple meals that are quick to put together. They don't cost a fortune and they taste good, but they tick a lot of health boxes. So essentially the 4 principles are 30 grams of protein per meal, 30 grams of fibre a day, and 30 different plants a week. And then the 4th principle, if relevant to people, is if they want to lose some body fat, is to get into a small calorie deficit. That might not be relevant to everyone, and if so, they could just skip that chapter. But yeah, the other principles I think are relevant to every adult, men and women, and the book is aimed at everyone. So if I assume your audience is largely female, but if they've got partners or they can male partners, they can do it with them or family members. And so what I've done is translated it all this kind of research into, like I say, meals that people actually look forward to eating. So it's all about keeping it kind of nice and simple, really straightforward, no exotic ingredients. Everything can be bought from a supermarket. There are meal plans in the book. I've broken it down into breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's lots of tips and tricks, easy ways to kind of layer on protein and layer on fibre, and also kind of quick wins when it comes to eating 30 plants a week. Because I think for lots of people that will sound quite ominous, but actually once you kind of, know a few hacks, hate the word hack, but once you've got a few hacks under your belt, actually it can be quite easy.
Because sort of herbs and spices count, don't they? So
yeah, I think people think, oh God, I'm struggling with 5 a day, let alone 30 a week. But it isn't just fruit and veg, it's nuts and seeds, it's legumes, so chickpeas, beans, peas, and it's spices and herbs, and they are, such a quick win. I tell people to be kind of, rather than stingy with their spices, to really try and think about ways that you can kind of layer them on. So, for example, your porridge, your overnight oats in the morning, I usually add in some nutmeg, some cinnamon, maybe a bit of cardamom, and you've got three right there.
I must say, you did convert me to overnight oats with chia seeds, and in the end, I resisted them for a long time. And then, do you know what happened? I went into my local discount supermarket, and it had one of those fancy breakfast Kilner jars that had it. So I was seduced by the hardware. And then thought, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm finally going to do the overnight oats thing. I'm only 5 or 6 years behind the curve.
And do you like them?
I do. I think I've got a bit of a textural thing with the chia seeds. So I think as long as you're not getting that kind of slimy frog spawn thing going on, I can live with it.
So you can blend them, which is really easy, and then you don't get that texture issue. Same with cottage cheese. I'm always talking about cottage cheese, but for that's a really great way to kind of boost your protein. Again, you can blend that, and then it gets beyond, gets over that issue. But you're right. I think a bit of storage porn, I'm all for it. Buying a bag of mixed seeds, sticking it in a Kilner jar, putting it on your table. It's a constant reminder to just take a spoon and add it to your oats, your porridge, your salads, over soups, and instantly you've got another 6 plants right there.
And I think did you mention in the book your idea of getting a kind of a mixture of things and kind of blending them to make your own kind of topper to put onto breakfasty things, which I think is a brilliant idea, and I'm definitely going to do that.
Yeah. I've given a list of ingredients. You can pick and choose. You can make it savoury or sweet, and whack in there's gazillions of possibilities there.
And is it something crazy like the percentage of us who are actually hitting our fibre targets is incredibly low, isn't it?
It's woefully low. We are supposed to be getting 30 grams a day, so that's the UK government recommendation, and we are currently only hitting about 16 grams, between 16 and 18. In the US, it's much worse. That guideline is actually what is recommended for 5-year-olds. So we really do need to.
Wow.
Yeah. We need to think about upping our fibre. I think the issue is that it's kind of thought of this quite unsexy, boring, beige, bland foods.
It's got a bad PR rap, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. But it needs a kind of, I think people just need to get their head around the fact that it includes all plants, and there's a plant wheel in the book which gives loads and loads, hundreds of kind of options and inspiration.
We talked a little bit about the overwhelm, but other than getting ourselves some lovely hardware porn, as you've so beautifully called it, what other things can we do to kind of set ourselves up for success? And because I think I don't know about anyone else listening, but very often I'll kind of go through cycles where I'm super keen about something new and I kind of, I'm really going for it and enthusiastic for the first wee while, and then things start slipping, you move back into bad habits, and before you know it, you're just sort of cooking the same 5 things on rotation again that the children will eat. Don't get me started on that. So what are your kind of tips for getting yourself really well set up to succeed, and or kind of get yourself back on the bandwagon if you're slipping a little bit?
So I think first of all you need to make it enjoyable. Don't be making anything with any ingredient that you're really not into, because any excuse and it's going to fall by the wayside. So it needs to be something that you look forward to eating. There are 80 plus recipes in the book, so hopefully we'll give some inspiration to people. But what I would do is choose something that you really are, a big fan of. So let's say for me, as you've already mentioned, I am a huge fan of overnight oats. So you kind of I think you almost need to perfect your recipe so you don't have to even, look at a book or look at all the measurements. You've got it in your head. You've done it so many times. But then you start to switch it up to keep it interesting and also to keep it kind of diverse and keep adding those different plants in, or some kind of just to keep it versatile. So, for example, let's say it's overnight oats. Oats would be one of the kind of mainstay ingredients as part of that recipe. Now, what you could then do is swap the exact same number of oats, maybe for oat bran. Oat bran has a different, slightly different fibre profile, tastes a little bit different, will give it a slightly different texture. So, you're keeping it kind of fresh. Then you could swap your oats for rye flakes, let's say. Again, a different type of fibre, a different type of plant food. You could then swap your rye flakes for quinoa flakes or barley flakes or buckwheat flakes. There are so many different ways that you can just change one thing within the recipe, but essentially you've got a whole new kind of switch on it,
Different taste, different
if that makes
texture.
sense.
Yeah, and sort of, I guess, thinking about what fruit, if you're putting fruit into it, what's in season, or whatever's on
Absolutely. So
offer.
yeah, you could swap out your veg, add in different toppings, put different have a different side with your meal. There are so many ways that you can keep things feeling really fresh. I also think that batch cooking can be really helpful just to cut through the overwhelm. Meal prepping again, so just making sure that you've got, I've actually invested in some really nice storage porn. And it's a constant reminder that it needs filling up. And there is nothing better than when you open your fridge and you've got all this these meals already prepped up and ready to go. And that kind of cuts through a lot of I think the time that people feel that it takes to eat well. You can do the same thing for smoothies. I've bought these really nice resealable silicone bags. Just pack them all. So you do them, let's say, 5 in a go, get all your smoothie ingredients in there, put them in the freezer. Then all you've got to do is pull it out, add your milk or whatever kind of liquid that you're using with
I
them,
haven't thought
blend
about
them
doing
up,
that.
and you're good to go. And remember, we're not nothing. This doesn't have to be perfect. We don't. I'm all about kind of imperfectly perfect. You don't have to be hitting these targets exactly every single day. We just want to kind of nudge towards them. It depends where you're at, right? So yeah, don't be kind of put off by the fact that you've got to be nailing 30 all the time. It's what you eat and what you drink and what you do the majority of the time that counts. So keep it realistic.
Yeah, we don't want to be using it as another stick to beat ourselves with if we're not kind of 29 grams today. We're like, it's fine. In the
Exactly.
aggregate, we're getting where we need to be.
And also, if you are only, let's say you are only hitting 15 grams of fiber a day, even nudging that up to 20 is going to give you a huge amount of benefit. So we can do it incrementally. If doing it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner feels really overwhelming, and I say this in the book, just start with breakfasts. Get those really kind of bedded in, and then you can start adding when you feel that you've got that kind of wedded into your routine, so to speak.
And actually, so you've got right at the beginning of the book, you've got this sort of little timeline about what once you start putting those changes in place, what kind of sort of physiological changes we can expect to see. And I really like you talking about that even just within 1 to 2 days of putting more of that fibre, more plants, more diversity into your diet, that your gut microbiome is already responding to that.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the benefits you won't even see at the beginning, but they are going on internally. And I think, we all want a kind of quick fix, don't we? We all want overnight miracles. And so I've had to kind of in the beginning of the book, I've kind of tried to reframe people so that they've got a kind of realistic mindset about whether that's weight loss or your metabolic health markers. They are Lots of things will be changing. You might just not notice it on the outside. So yeah, you've kind of almost got to trust the process.
And I'm just flicking through because I've sort of dog-eared some of the recipes that I definitely want to try. So, but also I kind of have to do this with a weather eye to what the kind of my kids will and will not tolerate, which is half the battle. Any kind of good advice in terms of
making it family friendly. I
yeah.
would get them to go through it with you and, circle the things that they definitely won't, cross out anything that they definitely won't try, and get them to pick out the things that maybe appeal to them, and maybe discuss, I've given long kind of lists of protein sources. So if there's something in there, let's say they hate salmon, which lots of kids do, go back to the protein table and then find an alternative protein source that you can swap it with. The meals are really, there's nothing fancy in there. There's nothing difficult. Everything is designed to be cooked or prepped or prepared in less than 30 minutes maximum.
Brilliant.
And there is nothing remotely complicated. So they're kind of made to be really easy to swap ingredients in and out.
I've got I tell you what I do want to try, which is you've suggested grating tempeh, which is explain what that is if people haven't come across it before.
Yeah, it's a fermented plant-based product that's made from soybeans. So it kind of ticks a lot of boxes. It's fermented, so it's really good for your gut. It's incredibly high in protein. It's a complete protein, so it's got all the amino acids that you need. And it's plant-based. Now, the book covers vegan, veggie, and flexitarian options. But I think if you are plant-based or you're trying to eat more plant-based protein, you can feel a little bit limited sometimes. So tempeh is a really, really good addition, actually.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like I say, if you like you've mentioned, grating it kind of makes it almost kind of crispy.
We do so because we are mostly plant-based actually as a family. So I've done that with tofu to kind of make fake kebab meat for kind of tacos and pittas and stuff. But I've never tried it with tempeh, so I'm quite curious. I'm going to try that one and report back.
Yeah, it's what I was going to say was it's similar to tofu, but a little bit more dense. So a lot of people like it because it's really filling. And it does have that, if you grate it, it's almost like mince. So it works brilliantly in tacos and
Meatier
things like that.
texture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I'm definitely going to try that. What are your, I mean, other than your kind of overnight oats staple, what are your kind of favourites from the this list that are in the book that you kind of reach for again and again?
So one of the things I really love doing is prepping my lunches, because lunch tends to be fairly, what's the word, tight. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants a lot of the time, so it has to be quick. So the miso ramen noodles are lovely. I love them. You don't necessarily need, a fancy kind of glass container, but if you do, I've talked about how you put the dressing at the bottom, and then there's a kind of way of layering up the ingredients so that they stay really nice and crisp. So essentially it's a salad but with noodles in it. It stays really nice and crisp and crunchy, and then you turn them upside down, and then the dressing is kind of designed to be the last thing that drizzles out all over the rest of the ingredients. You mix it up, you eat it. So it's really nice and portable, really easy to kind of take to work or just to have in your fridge if you're working from home.
Yeah, I think lunch is the one where I quite often fall down. It's we're quite good at sort of planning out meal planning for sort of dinner times and shopping for that, and I think lunch always gets a little bit forgotten about, and then I'm sort of scrabbling around going, okay, how am I going to kind of ready steady cook something from the kind of what's left in the fridge for lunches? So yeah, I think that's definitely an area where a bit more kind of forward planning and having some of those kinds of recipes that can either be prepped or you kind of you've got all of the right stuff to kind of pull it all together pretty quickly will be really, really helpful.
Yeah, like the frittatas are really good. You can make a big one on a Sunday and then just cut it up in wedges like a cake, and then brilliant throughout the week. That will stay fresh for at least 3-4 days. I'm a big fan actually of wraps. So you just cube up some halloumi, bung it in a wrap. There are some nice wraps now. They're not all kind of full of emulsifiers and preservatives. Costa and Malika are excellent, actually. They do really nice kind of wholemeal flatbreads They've literally got 4 ingredients in them. So nothing horrible whatsoever. You heat it through just to make it a little bit more pliable. Whack in, whether it's feta or halloumi or some sliced up, pre-cooked, I don't know, mackerel fillets if you're into that kind of thing, or chicken breast. And then just layer up some, I quite like, or even eggs, layering up with some beans, putting in a handful of rockets and tomatoes, cucumber, and boom, you're there. What else? I also really like nourish bowls, which sound a bit of a faff, but if you spend one day kind of chopping, or you invest, and actually I've put this in the gadgets, you invest in one of those vegetable
the little
choppers that
hand
chops
kind of, you push down on the
yeah,
top and it chops stuff super
exactly.
quickly.
Exactly. So, you can chop everything within about 10 minutes, literally. And it's all really nice and uniform. So the kids might like that too. They might like getting involved with that. And then you've got all of your ingredients that you can then kind of dip into each day to make up your nourish bowl. And essentially, a nourish bowl looks a lot like a wrap, right? But it's just in a bowl. It's not in a wrap.
Sounds fancy.
There's lots of other ways, Emma, sorry, just because I know that people want kind of hacks. They want these ways to kind of cut through and make things a lot quicker. So buying egg whites in a carton is really, really helpful. You can add it to whole eggs, because I think it's important to get the yolk in with the choline, and that's where most of the kind of nutrients are. But adding some extra egg whites into your frittata mix or your omelette is a brilliant way to boost up the protein content.
Does that impact the flavour a lot? It kind of makes it more towards because I guess it depends how much you use. I'm always slightly worried it's
Exactly.
gonna
I
make it
wouldn't
taste a bit like the edges of a fried egg.
dilute it almost. Yeah, yeah. So what I would do, you'll see in the recipes, most of the time I use like a maximum of 100 ml, and that gives you quite a lot of extra protein, but it doesn't mean that you're kind of diluting the flavor down. Exactly. Buy tubs of cottage cheese and look through the recipes before you start thinking, oh my God, I hate cottage cheese. Like I say, blend it up. I've even got it in a blueberry chia pudding. You cannot taste it, I promise. Protein bagels, they would probably be classed as ultra processed, but they tick a lot of boxes. I'm all about, like I said at the beginning, keeping things realistic, and it's what you eat the majority of the time and what you kind of pair these UPFs, these ultra processed foods, with, that counts. So keeping the rest of it really nice and fresh, and using whole foods, actually it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The net result is you've got a protein bagel, but you've also got lots of fibre and lots of goodness in there.
Yeah, and you can make those, can't you, yourself quite easily with, like you say, the tub of blended cottage cheese, some flour. I think it's got a little bit of salt in it.
2 ingredient bagels, they are in the back of the book, funnily enough.
Very good. I have tried making those a couple of times, and I really, really like them. And I've made up, thinking about kind of flavouring and stuff. So I've made up a little jar of everything bagel seasoning of my own, which I then kind of, egg wash them and stick a bit of that over the top. Really, really nice.
So easy. Yeah. And that real satisfaction of, I've made this myself and it tastes great. I know exactly what's in it. I think there's also, I don't know if you've tried this, buying a kind of, my pronunciation won't be great, but sofrito, so frozen veg in a bag, which is onions, garlic, celery, and carrots, already all chopped up, frozen in your freezer, perfect for casseroles and stews and soups and things like that. And actually, you can use that as the base for there's a harissa chickpea, one of my favorite recipes actually in there. Harissa chickpeas with crispy salmon. So yeah, that will kind of shave minutes off your prepping and your cooking time.
Yeah, I think we're all about that, aren't we? Just sort of trying to make cut whatever sort of shortcuts in the nicest possible way that can kind of help us get there a bit quicker at the end of a busy day. So I think maybe it's important to say, because some people care about these kind of things, so this is not a kind of cookbook with nice glossy kind of photos of recipes. It's very, very much more sort of functional. You've still got the recipes and all of the ingredients, all of the kind of the protein and the fibre and the calories and the prep time and all of that kind of thing, but just without the kind of the fancy photos. And then at the back, as you say, you've got meal plans where you've done the kind of different combinations. So even if I don't know, if you thought, okay, well, one of those dinners isn't going to work for me or for my family or whatever, then kind of swapping it out with one of the other possibilities, and then that'll sort of take away a bit of the overwhelm, because you've got it all planned out for you. So you've got a vegan one, a veggie one, and a flexitarian, and then a blank one as well, so you can do your own. So actually you could photocopy that and then sort of stick it on the fridge or whatever. That's great.
Yeah, we purposefully didn't put photos in, to keep the cost down, so it's half the price of a full, color picture book, which tend to be quite expensive. But also, like I said at the top, we are, there is nothing remotely complicated about these recipes. They are literally recipes for dummies. I am not a cook. I am just somebody who wants to throw things together, and that's what my clients are. So, I was very much talking to the time poor, the overwhelmed, who just want a quick lunch and they want it now.
And your advice, obviously, kind of, don't be afraid to kind of switch out either the main protein source or just kind of tinker with it a bit. They're sort of pretty foolproof.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so many variations. And if you just to like, I think we're probably running out of time, aren't we? But just in case somebody wants a quick fix, we haven't really talked about protein powder, but you can use protein powder in a lot of these recipes. I haven't put it in many of them because I know that not everybody wants that, but that is an option. It's really quick, it's really convenient, and it's a little bit expensive, but you won't use that much. I wouldn't recommend using it at every meal, obviously, but it can be a great kind of time saver. And there are also fibre supplements. So, for example, I mean, nobody's going to see this because we're not being filmed.
Okay.
But
Send me a link and I'll put it in the show notes.
I will, yeah. There's a fibre supplement that I am loving called Myota. I have no affiliation with them. But, a single tablespoon of this, so just 10 grams, will give you 10 grams of fibre. So it's non-fermentable. It's really kind of easy, good for sensitive guts. And essentially, you've, by adding that just to a little glass of water, starting your day off like that, you're a third of your way through those 30 grams.
Okay. So you wouldn't put it in food. It's just like you drink it rather than a.
You can add it to baking and things like that. But no, I just do a shot every morning.
Ooh, sounds good. I'll definitely try that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all your top tips. So 30-gram plan is out now. I'll obviously put a link in the show notes. It's published by Vermilion and available in all good bookstores. Thank you so much, Emma, for coming back to talk to us. And I look forward to diving in and trying many of those recipes myself.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully I'll be back for a third time when I've got my third book out.
Is there another one in the works?
There is.
Good. Well, don't tell us something. Come back and talk to us when it's done. Thank you so much.
I will. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks for listening to the Middling Along podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go and leave us a review over at Apple Podcasts. You can check out the full back catalogue of all our episodes over at middlingalong.com. You can also find out more about my work as a coach. Go to www.thetripleshift.org.